Hey, what's up, and welcome back to another episode of A to Zeke Sports. And in today's episode, I have something really special planned for you guys today. We will be looking at my top 10 boxers of all time. And before we get into that, make sure you like this video and subscribe to A to Zeke Sports, and make sure to comment down below if you have any suggestions for the channel or anything you'd like to see. So let's get into it. So, what made me decide to do this is I recently just watched the Canelo Alvarez fight um, against the Turkish fighter that he just destroyed in 3 rounds, and people are talking about whether he passed Julio Cesar Chavez as the best Mexican fighter of all time. I was thinking, while this was like a hot topic, I'd just look at my top 10 pound for pound boxers of all time, and this list may surprise you a little bit, and people could get upset about it. I was talking to my dad about this, and he actually had a completely different list than me. But this is just who I think are the top 10 boxers of all time, and I'll be explaining why I set it up that way. And yeah, so this should be fun. Okay, so getting into it, number 10, I have Bernard Hopkins, who just recently retired just a couple years ago. He fought until he was 54 years old, and he was the 2001 Fighter of the Year. His record was 55 wins with 8 losses and 2 draws. And he spent most of his fighting career in the middleweight division. He won the IBF title in 1995, and he had 20 consecutive fights where he defended his title, and that's one of the best streaks of all time. Uh, he just really beat a lot of top names, and he was just one of the more feared boxers in the ring. That's why I have him at number 10. There are still 9 boxers that were better than him all time. He was still a very good fighter. Number 9, we've got Sugar Ray Leonard, who's most famous for his 3 fights with Roberto Duran, a very respected uh, Hispanic fighter. And he was from he's a Pakistani fighter, but uh, he was a very impressive fighter. He was actually in my uh, my one of my boxers that I had in the running up uh, for this. Um, so Sugar Ray actually lost to him in the first fight, and then coming back, he beat him in the second fight, where it was like the famous scene of Duran saying "No mas, no mas." He said "no more" in Spanish, and the fight was ended. Uh, and so Sugar Ray, he didn't actually have that many fights. He was uh, named the boxer of the decade in the 80s, uh, which was impressive. There was a lot of good boxing going on back then. His overall record was 36-3-1. Like I said, he didn't have a lot of fights under his belt. He spent most of his time at welterweight. That's where the matchup between him and Duran was uh, at the welterweight division. And so Sugar Ray Leonard won. Uh, he won a title, at least one title, in 5 different weight divisions through his pro boxing career, and his legacy was, of course, cemented by the win over Duran and then winning again in the third fight. And so, yes, at his peak, he was definitely a top 10 boxer of all time. Moving on, number 8, I have marvelous Marvin Hagler, uh, the fighter out of New Jersey. He had an impressive record of 62 wins, only 3 losses, and 2 draws. And his peak was definitely in the late 70s and early 80s. And he only lost 3 fights, and they were all by decision from his career of 1973 to 1987. And so he was just very consistent, and uh, Hagler defended his title successfully on 12 times. They were not consecutive, but on 12 different occasions, he did defend his title. And the first 7 of those, uh, he won by knockout. And so that was really where his peak was. And if you just look at some film of him, he was really a amazing boxer. And uh, yeah, so that's why I have him in my top 10. And so number 7, this is one I had a lot of trouble with. Some people have him a lot lower, some people have him a lot higher. I have Mike Tyson, one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time. He was actually the youngest to ever win a heavyweight title when he was just 20 years old. And Tyson is a legend. He's one of the most well-known boxers to ever walk the planet. And uh, uh, he on he's just really known for his knockouts, and his first 28 fights were all wins, and 26 of them were by knockout. It's absolutely incredible. And then when Tyson defeated Michael Spinks, also considered one of the better boxers we've ever seen in the sport, uh, he defeated him in 91 seconds in the first round. That was in 1988. That's about where his peak was. Uh, was very tough to beat uh, 80s Tyson. It was hard going through this list to see who actually could have beat him. He never lost in that time, and uh, once he beat Spinks in 1988, he had 38 knockouts, and 16 of them were in the first round. So not only did he have 38 knockouts by then in his career, but 16 of them were in the first round. That's absolutely incredible. And some people might argue that he should be higher, maybe in the top 5. Some people might argue that he shouldn't even be in the top 10 at all. His overall record was 50-6, and of course, he stayed in the heavyweight division throughout his entire career. So that's number 7, Mike Tyson. Moving on to number 6, one of the earlier boxers. He actually was uh, in the 30s when he was a very big uh, boxer. Joe Louis, who also was another heavyweight. Uh, I edged him over Mike Tyson because he also did have amazing knockout power. He had a better record than him, and he was a little bit bigger than Tyson too. So I think maybe in his prime he could have edged Tyson out. Uh, so I think it was interesting. This was probably one of the tougher decisions for me to see whether I should put uh, Joe Louis at number 7 and Tyson 6, or Tyson 7 and Joe Louis 6, which is what I ended up doing. And so looking at this, he was 66-3 in the heavyweight division, and uh, over a 15-year stretch, he was 60-1 with 51 knockouts. So this is another boxer with tremendous uh, power, and he went 140 consecutive months as the heavyweight champion and had 25 straight consecutive title defenses. And this stretch of dominance is one of the best we've ever seen, only rivaled by, of course, Bernard Hopkins' run, and maybe Julio Cesar Chavez's run as the champ. And where Lewis really with like the height of his career, he had lost to only one of his 3 losses to Max Schmeling from the German. He was a German boxer, and when he lost him in 1936, uh, it was a big victory for the Germans. This was like around the start of World War II, and then when Lewis knocked him out in the opening round, the first round of the 1938 rematch, it was a loss for the Germans because it was just a way to compete in every way possible, and so that was a big win not only in the sport of boxing but also for America. So Joe Louis kind of stood for that, and I have a number 6. Number 5, definitely one most of you have all heard of. He's a recent boxer, Floyd Money Mayweather, uh, the boxer of the decade in the 2010s. He ended his career 50-0. Really, how I look at it, he's 49-0. I don't really count his win against McGregor because McGregor's not even a real boxer. He was a UFC fighter, even though it was a very hyped up matchup. Uh, Floyd just kind of took care of him. He just wore him down and beat him up. So, what I do think is more impressive is his win over Manny Pacquiao, who I think is in the top 15 boxers. I didn't put him in my top 10 just because I thought some of these other great boxers edged him out. But that was one of his best victories. And Mayweather is a 15-time winner of major titles in super featherweight, lightweight, light welterweight, and light middleweight. And he was a champion in all of those. And he's got 15 belts. And he never won. He never lost any of his fights. 50-0. So that's a very impressive record. And so of course, uh, he beat some very respected boxers. Of course, Canelo Alvarez, who I mentioned at the start of the video. Uh, he caught him a little bit before Canelo's prime. Honestly, I think Canelo's prime is right now, but so he's got that on his resume. But yeah, just the way Floyd fought, he only 26 of his 50 wins were by knockout. But just the way it was very hard to touch him. His defense was amazing, and he just kind of wore you down and won a lot of decisions. And so yeah, He's in the top five boxers of all time. I've got him number five. Let me know what you guys think about that one. So number four, I've got Julio Cesar Chavez, and he has one of the more impressive records in all of boxing. He has 107 wins, only 6 losses, and 2 draws. And he won 6 world titles in 3 separate weight classes. And he was the fighter of the year in 1987 and 1990. Uh, this is when there were boxers like Tyson and some very good boxers in this era that Chavez was able to edge out for that. And he was a multiple time champ in, yes, three different weight classes, and which is very impressive, similar to Mayweather. And he does have the record for the most consecutive title defenses. He won 27 fights in a row as the champ without losing. He started his career 89-0 uh, before losing in 1981 for the first time and dropping to 89-1. And so it's impressive looking at he was 89-0 before winning a fighter of the year, and then after his first loss, he won it twice. So not only was he a very good boxer when he went on that streak, he was also very impressive even after his first loss and continued all the way to the end of his career. And so yeah, he ended 107, 6-2, and he's one of the most impressive boxers ever, and I think still the best Mexican boxer of all time. Number three, we've got Rocky Marciano, another undefeated uh, boxer, uh, only the second on this list. Him and Floyd are the only two who are undefeated, and he had a very short career actually, from 1947 to 1955, and he was a heavyweight. He held the heavyweight title for nearly 4 years without being beaten, and after 6 successful championship defenses, uh, he retired on top to finish his career undefeated. And of his 49 wins, 43 of them were by knockout. So it was very hard to beat Marciano. No one was able to do it, and he ended his career undefeated and goes down in the top three. And I've got him third uh, on this list for greatest boxers all time. Number two, I've got Sugar Ray Robinson, who by far has the most fights on here. Boxing he had a very long career from 1940 to 1965, so a 25-year career, and he was a welterweight, um, and over an 8-year stretch, Robinson was unbeaten in 91 straight fights, and he was a two-time fighter of the year, similar to Chavez. And his dominance in the sport was unbelievable. And really, the only reason he started losing, why he's got those 19 losses on his record, even though the 173 wins are amazing, it's because he tried to move up once he had just absolutely destroyed the competition at his weight class. He tried to move up some weight classes, and he did fine, but he had some losses up there. And he held the welterweight title from 1945 to 1951. So he went on a 6-year stretch where he had the title. And of those 173 wins, he had 109 knockouts. So it's very impressive. Um, his longevity is amazing. Uh, Only Bernard Hopkins can rival how long he went. But yes, he is the number 2 fighter of all time. I think you guys were all expecting this. Number 1, I've got Muhammad Ali. He's the greatest. That's his nickname. Starting off his career, he was a gold medalist in the 1960 Summer Olympics in Italy. And I can't really say a lot about Muhammad Ali that you probably haven't already heard. Um, he won his first heavyweight championship uh, at the age of 22 when he defeated Sonny Liston in 1964. You've probably seen that famous picture of him standing over Liston after he knocked him down and won by technical knockout. And uh, some of the moments that you've probably seen are his amazing bouts with George Foreman, nicknamed Rumble in the Jungle, and his third matchup against Joe Frazier, the Thrilla in Manila, and um, he ended his career uh, 56-5, and um, just amazing what I was able to do. The height of his like athleticism. If you watch, I'm gonna put the film on this video, so you're probably watching it right now. His The peak of his athleticism definitely was against Cleveland Williams, who was a very respected fighter in that era, and Ali just kind of beat the snot out of him. He destroyed him, and it's just hard to picture anyone being able to beat the Ali we saw in that fight. And uh, his wins against Joe Frazier and George Foreman, those are two of the most feared fighters of all time. I think both of them make the top 20. George Foreman definitely makes the top 15. He was one of the fighters I was considering putting in this top 10, but he just didn't quite edge it out. But yeah, Muhammad Ali, definitely the best heavyweight of all time. Him and Mike Tyson both have a case for it, but Muhammad Ali uh, just how big he was. He's like the Michael Jordan of boxing, and that's why he's there in my top 10. And I don't know if any of you guys were surprised about that. If you were, let me know, because I saw some lists online where they had maybe like Marciano number 1 or Floyd Mayweather or Robinson. I put Chavez kind of high. That's what my dad, when he talked to me, he was like, "Really, you put Chavez that high?" But like, yeah. So uh, that's my top 10 boxers of all time. I put a lot of effort into making this list. I had to do a lot of research. So please make sure to like this video. And if you enjoyed this video, um, and please check out other A to Z content. And if you like that, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any more A to Z content that's still to come. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of A to Z Sports. Catch you guys in the next one.